We have a lot of artists here. We have a really dope artist community here in Montgomery. And they're all because of the history of the city. A lot of them, born and raised here, they know it, but they want to be more engaged, civically engaged.
But with more people comes more capacity, more ability to build more partnerships, but also stronger partnerships. So a part of the reason why Billy and I were hired was to expand that work and to grow those partnerships within the work.
I tell people, in short, we're like the agency for the movement. We approach the work on the premise that narrative and messaging is critical to building equitable power structures and closing the knowledge gap. The North Star for us is to build ideological power.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming. We ask that you please put your phone on silent or vibrate. No photos, videos, no audio recordings inside the museum. When you make it over to the memorial site, feel free to take pictures there if you like, and also in the lobby, it's okay.
This fight, this isn't a federal fight. This is a local fight.
Yeah.
This is why the state legislature is so important.
Yeah.
And all this stuff is happening under the guise of states' rights. So right now, as free Black people, our freedom is not codified into law.
Yeah.
Like that is scary.
But like you say, who controls the narrative controls the history, right? So we think about how they frame King and frame Malcolm X as if they were opponents when they weren't. They were contemporaries. They were colleagues. They had healthy debate between each other. They learned from each other. They grew from each other.
Yeah.
And even like the Washingtonians versus the Boysians, two sides of the same coin.
The same coin, yeah.
So it's just the way they frame the history.
I came to the EJI for the very first time after participating in the George Floyd uprisings, and I saw this placard the first time I came here, and I always look for it when I come back, because when I saw it, George Floyd was was murdered, was lynched, and the kickoff to that was that the store that he was trying to pay for goods at thought that his $20 bill was counterfeit, so they called the police. That's what started that whole encounter with the police. And to see this to happen in 1896, it felt like, what's changed?
I really like Gordon Parks just as an artist. Specifically, he has some great photos of his visit to Mobile, Alabama. And so I know there was some like unpublished photography that I wanted to see if there was anything else from my hometown. He actually has a couple famous ones. In one of the pictures, the people depicted share the same last name as me. And I was just curious, are they, I've looked a couple times, but I don't know if they're related to me or not. I asked my folks and they don't really know either, but there can't be that many Black Thorntons in Mobile, Alabama. Yeah.
My body was on fire. That's not my first time going through the exhibit. I think it was my first time because I wasn't having to guide people and talk. Like, I actually got a chance to just sit in it. And so my body literally was on fire.
So we talk about, the revolution as if it's something that's coming. No, when you're living it and doing the work, that's what it feels like. It feels rapid. It feels like everything's happening and nothing's happening at the same time.
There be names in that museum that we are just not taught. We are not told about. They aren't talked about. There's art and culture within those walls that should, in my opinion, just be mainstream knowledge, information, art, and culture. So we are doing the work to make these stories, narratives, and histories just exist.
Our people have been so resilient. So there's a legacy of resilience and resiliency as well that I'm also accountable to. We're not just carrying the pain and the hurt, we're carrying that legacy of resilience as well. So I think about that as I think about the people that we are all collectively doing work with right now. But I also think ahead to the future generations.
That's my word and that's my North Star is imagination, and using said imagination because our ancestors had to use their imagination to do everything they did. They were creating a world that didn't exist. And they tried a bunch of things. They was throwing stuff at the wall to see what stuck, right? And we're operating from their playbook. But we got to put the playbook down and be like, all right, let's figure something else out. You know what I'm saying? Along with what we've learned from this playbook, what's next?
My word would be reflective. So this also isn't my first time going, but it's my first time at the new location. And so there's more exhibits now. But I remember standing in front of the photos of the Montgomery bus boycott and going, I don't know any of these names. And these are the names I should have known because these are the people who actually organized the groundswell. We are literally documenting the movement. And I think about, like, anytime I see a line about somebody, in the museum, it's like that one line. I think about, like, the whole life behind it. How much do we know or not know? And what was the labor of love and the effort it took to preserve that knowledge for 200 years, 150 years?
Just watching Brian Stevenson's labor of love, over like all these years, it's like, dang, this man has walked in so many rooms and said mass incarceration or wrongful conviction that it probably became like more of his name than Brian Stevenson. Like, you know what I mean? And seeing what he's done and the fact that he was able to bring it back to Montgomery, because I don't think he's from Montgomery, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
But he's a professor at NYU, like, you know what I'm saying? He could have took that anywhere, like, you know, but to bring it somewhere here where it resonates, you know, and it sits in a place where the conversation can, you know, be extended by just walking outside.
I was like feeling sick in my stomach. And then as we get to the prison part, it's just like, I was telling you some of this, like, and I'm thankful, like, you've let me write about it, but there's like prison protests happening in Alabama right now.
My word, well, actually it was really hard for me to identify one word, because I think it was mostly two things. One, reflection, and second, affirmation. I've spent a great deal of time reflecting on me growing up in South Carolina, spending a decade of my life in Charleston, being with Gullah Geechee people, understanding how race impacts everything, every single part of our lives, learning history of the slave port, which was the largest slave port in the nation, and how that's so heavily embedded, even till this day, to everything that impacts the people of Charleston.
We're here now in 2024, right, and there's more to create, you know what I mean? So the people after us can see more of this, because like everybody said now, there's still stuff going on. So if nobody's capturing that and creating that next museum and creating that next art exhibit, then it's lost. I feel creative behind it.
I just want to say this though. I'm born and raised here, and I've never seen anything in this nature. So I really appreciate everybody who was involved in making this happen.
I appreciate those powers. And then you did something else. Question that I want to put out there. I just want to ask folks, like, what personal experiences has shaped your views on race, culture, democracy, and just Black liberation?
Exactly when have we had access to inclusive history? Show me the time, show me the decade, show me the book where you experience some sort of inclusive, equity-driven, comprehensive history. How many of you all are familiar with Carter G. Woodson? He's considered the father of Black history, right? There is no such thing as formal education for him as a child. In some of his autobiographical work, he talks about eating grass, the level of poverty that Black people are experiencing at the time. Black people at that time understood that education was central to any kind of pursuit of freedom that they would engage.
You know, hip hop is a culture. It is the art. It's the fashion. It's all of that. So when we say hip hop, you know, we're talking about leveraging all of that to educate a lot of people. But hip hop, as Hip Hop Caucus as a name, short version. We're actually celebrating 20 years this year, September. September 11th. You know, as widely respected as hip hop is now, it wasn't always that wasn't always the case, especially among some of our elders. And so the Congressional Black Caucus would not hear them, would not see them. And so Rev was a Howard alum. He said, okay, well, we don't have our own gatherings. So they walked down the street to Howard and held a hip hop caucus. And so that's where it kind of started from that. So we gonna have our own caucus and begin these conversations.
Hip hop opened the world to me. Like, you know, there's a song by Lupe Fiasco. So I'm a hard Lupe Fiasco fan. He had a song, and I'm blanking on, American Terrorist, like, you know what I'm saying? And then there was another one where he was talking about, and I never heard anything like this. He was talking about like pimps and hoes and capitalism. I'm like, yo, this man just really like broke down street culture in the way that I understood it. And so we'll listen to like Mos Def or something like that. He'll talk about like, I think mathematics. And he's like, man, you know, kids can't do their homework, but they can rock you on PlayStation. Like, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it's like, you ask what challenges like we face as a society. And I think it's accessibility, like, and that disconnect between, I think so many things, like whether it's generation, whether it's social status. And I'm so excited that we're here with like people like Reggie and Dr. Brown and, you know, Anisha. Those people are like kind of, there's a confluence and there's like these areas are no longer separated. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? And so they're able to kind of disseminate those things. So now I can sit down and have a conversation about redistricting along with a verse.
It seems to me that we are constantly working to find a broken man. And I find it very difficult to try to fix something or to try to heal something that you don't know. I find myself in a space where I'm concerned about the wokeness of today. I believe some people need to go to sleep. I'm concerned that we have practitioners practicing without praxis. I'm concerned that we have pontification without experience. And in the midst of the space, I'm concerned that regardless of how you live, that we will reference moments and we'll use this Sankofa bird type concept where we look to the past to move forward and we'll reference faith, but we have none of our own.
I call it digital blackface. Phrases or common African American vernacular that gets basically normalized, used, and then claimed by people on TikTok, for example, right? So I remember I was having this argument with a bunch of people from all various backgrounds, and the argument came down to, well, are they really being, I don't think we should call them racist if they don't know what they're doing. And I was like, yes, but just because you don't know that it's wrong doesn't excuse you from the behavior, because racism is both conscious and unconscious. So what we need to continue to work to address is this unconscious bias.
I'm not talking about the mainstream definition of white supremacy. I'm not talking about a white person that thinks they're good than you, because I'm talking about white supremacy as an ideology and a culture. And so that means that skin folks can perpetuate white supremacy ideology. So now looking at that definition, and we think about the illusion of power, I'm glad you brought up like people being in office. But then when we think about the supermajority in our state house, well, white supremacy ideology overwhelmingly holds weight on both sides of the house. We also got to be cognizant of the narratives that are put out there, because that whole pulling people down as they climb, that ain't just us. That is American culture. That's done. White folks do that. A lot of folks do that. So we have to also acknowledge like the damage that was done, the generational knowledge that was stolen from us as a result of slavery. Thank you all so much for coming out. I hope y'all caught the vibe. I hope y'all caught what we was putting down. I hope y'all picked it up. I definitely caught what you all was putting down, and I picked it up. And we hope to do more. Thank y'all. I love y'all.
Get some rest, huh?
Shout out to Hip Hop Caucus on your 20 years of dope work, working with artists, working in community. Keep doing what you're doing.